Okay, I think it's recording now. So in terms of the objectives for this session, uh, we need to try and understand and describe Microsoft Azure subscriptions and management groups. I recognize the ways to plan and manage the cost, understand the Azure support options, understand and describe the features of Azure service level agreement or CLAs, SLAs, sorry, and then finally understand and describe service lifecycle in Azure. So starting with Azure subscription. In terms of Azure subscription, we've got the graphic here, basically. We've got an Azure account which has the dev subscription, the test subscription, or production subscription, for instance. So an Azure subscription provides you with authentication and authorized access to Azure accounts. Now, after we've talked about security, I know you will realize the importance of these two aspects there. Subscriptions can provide billing and access control boundaries. So the limit on what people can do, and an account can have one subscription or multiple subscriptions. So it's quite flexible the way that they've set it up. Okay. So in terms of the offers that are available for subscriptions, you can have free, pay as you go, an enterprise level agreement, which for your entire organization, whether that's small, medium, or very large. A student or an account can have one subscription or multiple subscription, so you can fit into multiple different baskets there. So if you remember, I've talked about a few weeks, like a week ago. I've talked about it a week ago. But if any of you have either played or the popular game called Fortnite, if you remember, I talked about it before. So if you've, or even if you heard about it, that's run entirely in the cloud, and it's actually run through Amazon's web service. But in essence, that an entire enterprise agreement sets internationally because it's grouped by regions. So you are generally playing with others, with other opinions, or other Americans, or other people from Asia, for example. So it's localized in that front, but it is an enterprise level agreement that then scale scale based on how many people are playing at the moment. So it's quite complex setup, and an enterprise level agreement they've got there, but it seems to work for them very well. So in terms of Azure free account, with your free account, you can get 12 months of popular free services, $200 in credit to explore only Azure services for 30 days, and 25 plus services, which are always free. So generally, they don't want you to, like, they don't do anything like complex in there, but they will get you by in the cloud word at the end for of the trial. You can after the trial you can upgrade to pay as you go pricing. Management group. In terms of management group, your subscription can manage in multiple different ways through these groups. So you get many different groups at the top of the subscription. Then you've got different resource groups, and then the resources that sit underneath those. So subscriptions inherit conditions applied to manage to the management groups at the top level. So all the conditions filtered down from there, like 10,000 management groups can be supported in a single directory. So you could go for really widespread different setups to suit your any organization generally, and a management group can go a tree like management group tree can support up to 6 level in depth. So you can go even beyond individual resources or have intermediate layers uh, between these. So in terms of the planning and managing costs, we have here purchasing Azure products and services. So in terms of planning and management cost, this is one of the things that's generally quite challenging. There, there are three main customers types um, on which the available purchasing options for Azure products and services, and like the enterprise web directory, the enterprise web directory, and cloud services providers. So if we go to the enterprise level, first enterprise customer sign an enterprise agreement with Azure that's commit them to spending a negotiated amount on Azure services, which they typically pay annually. So it is that a whole one year, 1 year up. Here's a hour of money, for example, and that's the service that they will get for the amount of money. As soon as you burn up through that cash, you will get a phone call very quickly, working on what you need to do next. So then you've got web direct. So web direct customers sign up for Azure through the Azure websites, and you have the cloud service solution providers. Typically are Microsoft partners companies that a customer hire to build solutions on top of Azure. Payments and billing for Azure usage occur through the customer's cloud services solution provider. So the way this works, for instance, if you are an organization that needs a new customer resource management system, for instance, or some integrated software development that should work with Office 365 and manage lots of other things. So if you are a company that needs that and you don't have the tech team, if you don't have the tech team to do that or want to invest in that yourselves, then you go along to the one of these cloud solutions providers. So there are those dotted around all over the place, and quite a few of them in Birmingham. Basically, you can find them in Birmingham, near the NEC, I think, and the airport. Actually, there is a bit of a tech hub over there. So these people are experts in Microsoft Azure and Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Dynamics as well, as development platforms to build applications together for people that should. So basically, it builds applications together for people that should just seamlessly integrate everything that's in Microsoft ecosystem. So you go to them and you speak out what product you want them to build, and they start building it and set it up basically in the cloud. But they don't just build it for you. They maintain it as well. For they maintain it, and by maintaining the application for you, you are paying them monthly or annually for service level management, and they manage the Azure services and the cost that and the cost of that for you basically. Uh, in terms of well, now there are multiple factors that affects the cost generally at their pace level. We can think of them just in terms of the resource types, the service that being offered, and the location. So in terms of the resource types, costs are resource specific. So you are renting a very weak or not very powerful computer in the clouds. It's not going to cost you too much generally. Uh, as you might imagine, if you need like lots and lots of computers to do lots of complicated jobs, and then it's going to cost you more. Okay, so using that meter tracks and the number of meters associated with the raw resource depends on the resource type. In terms of the services Azure user usage rate and billing periods can differ between enterprise, web directory, and CSPs, CSP customers. Okay, maybe that's the CSP that you are getting to develop an application for you can negotiate slightly better rate, or will know exactly what service you need and which you don't need, then try to save you money. Generally speaking, giving their experience of working with the cloud, uh, they are going to be able to find the best set of solutions and services that are offered to solve a problem without uh, overusing. And naturally, if we are just coding something up um, and going our own software development project in-house, as a small medium enterprise, we are going to use many different services and solutions because it's easier, but it will cost more in the long term. Then there is location. So that effort affects costs too as well. As the Azure infrastructure globally is globally distributed, and the usage cost might vary. Well, the cost difference between locations that Azure product services for the Azure product and services that they offer basically. Although Azure is um, basically Azure have like lots of place, and you can find them in lots of places across the world. It's not, but it's not everywhere. So in terms of a local hub, maybe regionally dependent, but it's not everywhere. I think I remember one of our staff members recently were talking about coming across um, something like this, not necessarily with Azure, but from an AWS perspective. So he was talking to a health company based in Indonesia, and they have access to lots of healthcare data, especially after covering after COVID, and they are trying to do advanced prediction of what going on, and verification that the practicing doctor who are authorized medication and meeting patients are actually authorized. So basically, they are authorized doctors and practicing, and they are not unlicensed or doing something outside of their remit, because they have a potential fraud problem there. So they were looking to have a cloud-based solution to their problem, and the cloud, and they could get access to Azure, but what they really actually wanted is to develop an application using AWS, because of the inbuilt AI tool and techniques that are in AWS built. Unfortunately, AWS don't have local data center there, and without a local data center, and the Indonesian government weren't comfortable giving access to the healthcare data for that for that to be taken outside of the country to another AWS hub. So from a data problem to a security point of view, they are having to go. They are having to go with the Azure in the first instance until Amazon decide Amazon Web Service decide to build a data center in the region they are comfortable with. So now, in terms of billing purpose and the zones that affects that, we've got bandwidth issue naturally. So this refers to data moving in and out of Azure data centers. You may have heard of bandwidth. If anyone's complaining about the internet speed either at home or in the office, um, and the amount of people that are trying to get data shoving, you can imagine, basically it's like trying to shove too much water through a pipe, and water is information. So that's going from different areas, and you can't get too much water if you can only get what you actually fits in terms of the pipe. So um, and if there is too many people uh, are making requests of that, everyone's going to get less and less water coming out. It's going to be like sprinkler, and there is that's the bandwidth situation. So specifically for Azure, if we are thinking about it, bandwidth data moving in and out of Azure data centers, we've got some inbound data transferred um, for free, such as doing um, like data basically going into Azure centers, but the outbound data transfer, such as like data going out of Azure data centers pricing. Pricing is based on zones. So uh, for you to download the data and get it out of the data centers, that costs you. That costs you. But it is free to put data into the cloud, but it's not free to get it out of or to get it out. And the reason that they want to have a very efficient system for people to upload information and to be able to store it in there and manage it through the cloud, and restricted to that. So there is a uh, as a business proposition, uh, they don't really want people to be able to take everything out and move it to different cloud providers easily. They also don't want to have to spend on efficient infrastructure to move data out and make sure the pipe works outward as well as inward. Okay, it's massively costly for them to set up a reliable and very fast internet connection to all the data centers now. Uh, in terms of the zones, there are three broad zones generally. So we've got the West US, the East US, West Europe, and the other all in Zone 1. Zone 2 being Australia, Central Japan, Australia Center, Japan West, Central India, and others. Okay, and then Zone 3 being Brazil and Brazil south basically. There is Zone D. There is D Zone 1 as well. So you can break them up by subzones. So DB Dutchland, including Germany Central and Germany Northeast.
Mohammed,
Yes.
Narinder here. This is a small question. So are we saying that these zones for billing purposes have got a separate entity than the availability zones?
So, do you remember when I gave an example like of like what's happened with the uh, what's called the Indonesian healthcare system, for example? So there's no data center in the zone
I
where
get
they are based, right? So they can use a zone that close to them, for example, or region close to them.
sure.
It could be outside the country. So these zones are basically uh, the pricing based on the zone where your data center is basically located.
Okay.
So it's very cost effective as well.
Okay.
So
Thank
no worries. Now, the nice thing that Azure gives you is a simple tool to try and estimate how much it might cost you in terms of what your requirements are for an Azure system. So pricing calculator provides a detailed estimate of the cost associated with an infrastructure configuration. So if you are if you know you are going to you are going for a virtual machine in West US with Windows operating systems and standard tire with this kind of instance. So here we've got setup. Here we've got a setup with two virtual CPUs with 8 GB of RAM, 50 gigabytes of temporary storage. So a reasonable computer, that's a standard laptop specs. Now 8 giga of RAM, 50 giga of temporary storage. So it is relatively small hard disk, but you don't need to store that much information, generally on the cloud. So, uh, like for this kind of setup, a virtual machine, so basically that would be people being able to log in and remotely do their work from any device anywhere in the world, and the price for that over the year might be like 730 uh, 730 hours, um, or like $188, which gives dollars, given that the standard laptop might cost you around £500. Maybe last 2.5 years, last 3 years, you are looking into at the break even point being about the same two for those two as an organization. So it can be quite cost effective to it can be quite cost effective to have this setup, especially if multiple different people are going to be logging into the same virtual machine remotely and running it that way. And now beyond the pricing calculator, you can look beyond the pricing calculator. You can look at the total cost ownership calculator as well, and this is their way of trying to show you why you should have a cloud setup. So this is a tool to estimate cost savings you can realize by migrating to Azure. So report compares the costs of on-premises here and infrastructure with the cost of using Azure uh, uh, prospects and services in the cloud. So we've got an example here that I'm showing you just here, where it's been estimated exactly what's the requirements of an organization are in the cloud setup for Azure and so for Azure versus what versus what actually infrastructure, the heating and cooling of those systems, the security and the IT teams that goes together with that and running the data centers. So here we've got a comparison of 30 million pounds dollars, 30 million pounds or dollars um, of on-premises cost versus just over $500,000 of the Azure costs. So colossal difference in there. And with the individual pricing calculator, there is an example on Microsoft. Um, Lots of using the total cost ownership calculator too. So that could be quite useful if you go into an organization and they're not using a cloud. So if they are trying to run a small data center, um, if they're trying to run a small data center, for example, okay, and or set up of their own or set up of their own. So if you do have to work it out and say actually it would be much cheaper for us to go to the cloud, even if it costs us a bit to get an expert to set it up or to set it up in the cloud. So and you have these work through. I'll go through them later after the session. In terms of trying to minimize the cost for an organization, in terms of the performance, and you can perform the cost and analysis using the Azure pricing tool, TCO, a calculator. You can monitor the usage using the Azure advisor system and then implement the annual recommendations. So if it recommends a less powerful computer setups, then you go for that. And generally, they are making enough money from you as Microsoft Azure that they don't mind. They don't mind like to rather than to or they would rather make efficient recommendation and let you save some money, but stay happy with them rather than be upset about the amount you are spending and move to a different cloud provider. You can use a spending limit as well. So you can use a fatal customer in the first instance and then have some credit-based Azure subscription after that. Beyond that, for use as well, you've got Azure reservation system and Azure hybrid benefits in the hub. You could choose low-cost locations and regions if possible. It may slightly may slightly take longer for a website to load if you are hosting it basically in a low-cost location that's local to you, that's not local to you basically, and but if that's not a problem for you, if your customer won't mind waiting an extra second or two for websites to load, then that would be absolutely fine. A few years ago, there was a study that was done, and it said the average amount of people that spending looking into a website is actually 2 seconds, unless they are going there with a purpose. So that from the lot of work in the user of experience design and in marketing analytics as well, and understanding what people saw in those 2 seconds and how it can make sure that those 2 seconds are really valuable. So they decided to stay after. So they decided to stay after that. So open the website within 2 seconds and decide whether you're going to stay or not. They are going to try looking for the information they want from there, or keep using that website, or buy from them, or just hit back the back arrow in the time. Seems like a very short amount of time, but try it yourself next time when you are looking for some information, or probably you realize it before, when you are looking for some information online, reading a guide or a blog or watching a video or something that you really don't give it very long to justify whether you're going to stay or not, uh, and gain that information. See what the information that you will gain um, 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 from them basically in these 2 seconds, or like the short amount that you're staying there. You can keep up to date with these latest Azure customer subscription offer, and then apply tags to identify cost owners in your organization, and identify usage owners with tags as well, who are allowed to use the spend on Azure, who's alone, and who's the cost owner of that, who needs to manage them basically. So that's in terms of the minimizing the cost. So in terms of Azure cost management, we've got multiple different elements that are done through this. So we've got reporting, data enrichment, budgets, alerting, and recommendations. All come together and can come together in this neat little Azure cost management and cost analysis setup, to set up all the charts and graphs that you need for your IT assessment and finance reporting there. It's very useful as well. Okay, carry on. Now, beyond that, beyond the cost of beyond the cost of beyond the cost, let's look at the support options that are available through Azure. So we've got multiple support plans options, where every Azure subscription includes free access to billing and subscription support, Azure products and services documentation online, self-help documentation, white papers, and community support form. So it's all there for you. uh, any problem that you are having with the cloud access and cloud support, cloud maintenance and management things has already been asked and identified and likely has been already solved. Um, it's funny that sometimes, like when I'm talking about programming to my students, for example, I do run other workshops as well, like for Python and stuff like this. So when I talk to them about programming, for instance, and say that you won't come across a new problem with Python programming or with doing Java programming or this or that, every problem that you find, someone else has already found, and generally they've solved it. It's solved it as well. You are not trying to, you are not trying or going to be doing anything now. So why bother trying to solve it for solve something for yourself if it is complex problem instead of just searching up for what's the solution. Solution is finding and the implementations. So now might be it might be if you know what's the problem is, uh, it might be what's if you don't if you know what's the problem is and you can understand that you can understand it and find a quick fix yourself for that. So that's great. That's good personal development for you, but generally it's always quicker to find someone else's solution, um, that know that it will work basically. So if you look at this in multiple different layers, then from the basic developer standards, from the basic to developer standards and professional direct. In terms of the scope and basics solutions are available to Microsoft Azure accounts, to all Microsoft Azure accounts, but technical supports wouldn't be as a developer at that level. You have trial and non-production environments, and tech support is available in terms of business hours, access to support engineering, but via email. So beyond the developer tier one, we've got the standard here, where, where production workload elements would be the scope that you are looking at, and the technical support available 24/7 access to support engineers via email or and via phone and through the phone. And that level of support in terms of technical requirements is also available to professional direct all around the clock, every day, 24/7. And that's for business critical dependent systems. So now there are alternative supports channel too that we need to highlight, and this goes beyond Microsoft immediate reach. So you've got Microsoft Developer Network, Azure Forms, and Stack Overflow. Has anyone heard about Stack Overflow before?
No.
No.
Okay. So all right, so for those who doesn't know Stack Overflow, Stack Overflow is sorry for that. Stack Overflow is an incredible sort of solution, and it's just online and freely available. So when anyone's got a programming, coding, math, or stats, or any general kind of questions on there, they just post it there, and within minutes generally someone who's experienced in terms of programming, networking, or anything, really is jumping on there and with suggested answer. So some of the answers are a bit rubbish, but and it might be short, but there are lots of brilliant answers in there. So if you need to know how um, this type of programming can be done, or with this application, onto how to put this application into the cloud, and the chances are that someone's on Stack Overflow will have the answer, that they've already written it out, not just like, here's the solution, here's what you might, or here's what you might try. They also might tell you what's the problem is, or like what to tell you why the problem actually exists, what is the issue, and how to solve it, or even how to avoid this issue in the future. So they are really comprehensive artists that people are just contributing for free because they like to help others and solve problems. So basically, it's an incredible ecosystem. And there is a system called a server fault, Azure general feedback, and you can use Twitter to tweet Azure support as well. So Stack Overflow is, well, most of the programmers basically use it, even the experts one. So so it's just here. So you can basically join the community and like ask for anything, like just search for anything like on the cloud, or you know. And let's like verification. Okay. So for example, see, you have like, what does the old keyword do? It you see all these answers explains to you, like this is all one answer though. So it's very useful um, place to find answers for, or like solutions. So Knowledge Center, that there is also the Azure Knowledge Center as well, and so Microsoft Learn is there to try and teach you and upskill you in general ways of preparing you to use the cloud. But then any common questions or things that aren't working afterwards, you can try and use Microsoft Knowledge Center. The way that you might try and use the stuff, it's the same way that you might try and use Stack Overflow system. So this is a searchable database that contains support questions and answers from communities of Azure experts, developers, customers, and users. So you can just search by anything in there, filter by products, and then get the information you need. Uh, there is an example here for how to do uh, that on Microsoft Learn platform. Okay. So let's carry on. I think this is the last part now. I still have two parts in it. So Azure Services Level Agreements. Have anyone came across like the service, like CLAs before? Called CLAs before. Has anyone came across this one before, by any chance?
You mean this one or SLAs in general?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've come across SLAs from software vendors.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you want to implement, acquire or implement a software, you have to put together some Type of support. Say, for instance, you've implemented the Microsoft Dynamics from a supplier, a vendor, and you are having a problem. Say your business hours
Mhm.
is say from 9 to 5 o'clock or 9 to 6 o'clock, and the suppliers do close from open from 9 to 4:30 or 5 p.m. So it means the 1 hour in between 5 and 6 is uh it's contentious, or how will I put it? Like, it's debatable. So you have to sort of put some service level agreement in place.
Mhm.
Well, if we're going to, you have to be able to support me from 5 to 6 because apparently you lot don't open. So if they are okay with it, it has to go into service level agreement document to say, well, there is going to be some sort of on call, standby to help you support if say there is a disruption in service from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Something like that.
Yeah. So basically, the CLAs or service level agreements is the specific term that defined Azure performance standards. Beyond Azure service, beyond Azure, a service level agreement is just any agreements between two organizations where one is providing a service over a period of time that has someone that has some expectations in there. It doesn't have to be with Azure. It could be with anything. For example, we have service that we have a service that an organization that provide Moodles as a learning platform for us, and BCU has a service level agreements with them that documents and sets out the document and set out the expectation from BCU onto the provider, and the provider may say, okay, we are going to give you uptime of 99.99, and if they drop the provision of Moodle for some reason, where there's a sales break, or the system breaks, or it becomes inaccessible briefly. So if it exceeds the what sets out in the service level agreements, then there is ability on the organization. Maybe they have to drop the cost for us for a certain period of time. Now, specifically with Azure CLAs, define Microsoft's commitment to an Azure services or products for you and for you. Individual CLAs are available uh, uh, um, for each as a product and service. So there are customizable ones for each setup. They have an offer. They have offered and services which they offer, and it defines what happens if the service or products fails to meet the designed available commitments. Okay, so. Um, CLAs for Azure's products and services. Now, performance targets are expressed and as uptime and connectivity guarantees. So, to start with, as a general CLA setup, they guarantee to give you a setup, let's say, for example, 99.9 activity and uptime. So this would give you up to 43 minutes, right? Or uh, you know, pretty much 45 minutes per month, but they might be unavailable. So we are talking if it rolls in one block 1 day per year, but generally it might be couple of days, like couple of half days basically. So like short periods of couple of 2 hours period per year, and spending and depending on what the service is and how the SLA um, is set up, the performance targets range from 99.9, so 3 nines to 4 nines. So if we go from 99.9% up to, which gives uptime, which gives 43 43 minutes downtime per month, or all up the way to 99.99, that's 5 minutes per month. Okay, so that's a massive obligation that they are giving you there. If a service fails to meet the guarantees percentage of the monthly service fees, well, the service fees, basically the monthly service fees will credited to you, and that's automatically uh, that's happening through an automatic system in the background. Now we have something called composite CLAs. Uh, so if an application service has 99.95 SLA, and the Azure SQL database has 99.99 SLA, what is the composite service level agreements for an application using those two things that have got different uptimes? So the composite SLA is not an additional of those, or the highest one, or the lowest one. It is a product. It is the product of those. So if we had 99.95 for the web application and 99.99% time for the database, then our actual composite service level agreement will be 99.94. So that's actually lower than both of them individually. Can anyone suggest why it might be lower? Okay.
Oh, there are too many variables in that composite SLA.
Um, Basically, it's based on the probability of things breaking, and they've tried to make sure it's completely transparent in here. Or when you've got composite site set up, so if there is a 0.05 chances of the way back breaking, but it could break at any time through, and be unavailable, and there is like 0.01% chance of the SQL database breaking, but it could break at any time. It might be that they are down at the same time, but it might be that they are down in different times as well. So weather may break one day for 8 hours, or for 4 hours, but the SQL database might break separately in different days. So because they are independent systems, and they can be down in different times, the overall downtime can be guaranteed greater for the web application and the SQL database systems. Even though the SQL database may be hitting the 99.99 per 99 target, the web application may be hitting the target of 99.95. But because they are independent system, the web cloud, the web basically could be down, or the SQL database could be down, or just one of them individually at the time. Um, at the time, so the total downtime can be greater than 0.05. Okay, so um, you can have application service level agreement. So customers should determine what SLA is needed for your application, and you need to know your workload requirements and usage patterns. So that's something that I find really complicated personally, because I'm not from the cloud or an infrastructure background. So yeah, it seems really hard for me to be able to estimate a workload of any model or software that I've created previously, um, or any algorithm, for example, anything I want to host in there. So I've really struggled with that, and that's something that takes a lot of experience to build up and to know how much usage your system is going to get and when it's going to be used entirely. So you need to design application SLA for resilience and availability, then establish availability matrix. So the meantime to recovery. So not just how much time it might be down, but how long it might be take to get it back up online as well, and establish time between failure too. So ideally, you want there to be long period of time between failure. You don't want to have the chance that it would be fail on Saturday and on Sunday, uh, fail on Saturday, for example, and then on Sunday it will be down for the weekend. So if they fix it between on Saturday evening, because then it looks really bad for your customers to establish recovery matrix. So recovery time objective and recovery point objective. So what's happening is that rules and businesses setups and businesses um, continuity uh, plans have applied to the IT principles that were just sorted like 30 years ago. Before uh, if stuff went down, the IT team would work, you know, uh, around the clock to try and fix it, but they wouldn't have these requirements, uh, these key performance indicators or KPIs, and now they've been set up because it is set up as a business like this. So you have the resilience strategy, and you need to build in availability requirements too. So lastly, uh, we are going to talk about the service life cycle in Azure. Oh, we're almost there. Let me put my laptop on charge. So there is a public and private preview feature Microsoft offers. Uh, Previews of Azure features for evaluation purposes. With Azure previews, you can test beta and other pre-released features too. So private preview is an Azure feature available to contain to certain Azure customers to just to different certain Azure customers for evaluation of what you are doing. A public preview is Azure feature available to all customers for evaluation purposes. So you create an application or a piece of software or something you do You do a public preview as a pub as a preview, where as in preview what it looks like to everyone, but it will be up essentially to the private preview. So doing like testing it behind the closed doors that you want to do. If you don't want to release a piece of software that's going to break straight away, then that's only available for certain customers, so you need to pay for that service. Now, if you want to access uh, preview features, preview new functionality and feature for an existing service, you might want to go, for instance, to Kubernetes cluster. Okay, like we don't really have the scope to talk about Kubernetes here. It's a bit technical, but if you are interested, just Google it away. And there are plenty of information that's are available online. Um, you can preview of any services, and then you could preview any new services, for instance, in the marketplace. Now, if you want to access preview features, uh, okay. Now you could go through the Azure portal preview using this title. Um, you can go to using this title's smiley face, as you can see there. Here. So access the Azure portal preview, provide feedback on new features such as full screen blades, performance, navigation, notifications, and accessibility. Uh, improvements, and you can check out the portal feedback form too, and to see what people have recommended in there. In terms of the general availability, I think some of you came across this one. It's new features that are evaluated and tested. Feature bugs go through a life cycle of new active resolve and fix labels. Uh, General availability provides successful tested features to all Azure customers, so everyone gets those, and Azure blogs announcements is a good source of information to go and see what's going on the recommendation there. So that people are where people actually giving in more details. So uh, go from new to like active, to go from new to active to resolve to close. Okay, anyone who works within the responsible IT team will recognize this kind of process, where you basically log to an IT, you log an issue to the and then it goes from a new to being active, and then have someone working on it, and then resolve, and then maybe you get an email a couple of days later, say that we've resolved it, now it will change to be closed, for example. If you need to reopen it, if it is regressed, then you will move back to active stage after you notify us. This is the process. I think if you're from BCU before, you'll find this process when you send anything to the IT team. If you want to fix anything with them, let me find. I think I'll just show you an example of it. So here, I have here, for example, like I got an email, suspicious email, basically, and then it shows me that your email being resolved. So according to the graph here, like this one, I'm on this stage, and then they close the issue, basically. So it's a very simple process. Okay. Now, in terms of monitoring services and features, updates. Azure updates provide information about the Azure products, services, and features, products roadmap, as well as the availability of those two, which is worth keeping an eye on if you are working in teams in terms of the cloud infrastructure teams. So you can view details about all Azure updates and the stats, browse and search and for updates, and subscribe to Azure updates notifications by RSS. Generally speaking, if you got a cloud platform, you are going to have updates applied regularly and automatically to that. So it takes that worry about making sure that your system is up to date. Well, you do need to be mindful that any linkage, any links between architecture or systems and softwares and things could be potentially a bit more fickle, because you've got constantly updating system, and you need to be sure that any of your software and your applications you're setting up are feature proofed. Okay, so I guess that's the session for today. Hopefully I didn't take too long. I will just stop recording.